everyone to the memorial service for Miss Linda Martin and Mr. Aubrey Williams. I hope you had a joyful Thanksgiving for reverence of what God has given you and a belly full of stuffing. If you are unaware, I'm Linda's second oldest grandson, Nate Bowers, and it is my honor to stand before you today to memorialize the life that Graham and Uncle Aubrey lived. There's so many memories they have created for all of us. Certainly my words in this memorial will not do them justice as to the impact they had on this earth and to those, and with those of us here. Insomuch the honor is overdue, and we're happy to see everyone here. As a further reminder, at 1 o'clock at the old house where they grew up, we'll be planting encore azaleas for Graham and Uncle Aubrey. It'll be fertilized by their ashes. You are welcome to join us. When Dad asked me to speak, I couldn't help but have 1,000 memories bubble up at the same time. You didn't have to create any. They gave you plenty to take home. Maybe even some you didn't want, but got anyway. Then there were some memories you wouldn't trade for all time. That was the beauty of Graham and Uncle Aubrey. They never left us. As you know, I spent 15 years under the same roof as Graham, and my summers in Chauncey with Sprig. The first encounter I remember with Sprig was an exchange he had with Graham regarding dinner. I shouldn't call it an exchange. When you're a child, you can't tell if it's a fight or some good old-fashioned ribbing. So Sprig was good at teasing Graham with a straight face. It was hard to tell how she was handling it. Apparently, it wasn't unusual for them to trade jabs. I got the feeling they had been doing it for a while, half a century or so. I bet they're antagonizing each other even in the afterlife and for an eternity. But back to the memory. Graham had made Sprig some fried chicken. She asked him, how is it? And I remember her standing over him anxiously for a favorable response. And he told her it was, quote, bloody good, end quote. So I'm guessing it was a bit undercooked for Sprig's liking, probably a bit pink. I'm sure Sprig had been pampered by Aunt Faye Southern cooking and wasn't ready for a change. Of course, Graham didn't let that sit and told Sprig it was diet chicken as she stared at his waistline. It was the first time I saw Graham challenged that way. She seemed so comfortable with it. It was a bond between sister and brother that went well beyond the moment. As you know, Sprig was seasoned with quips. He had one or two for as many conversations as you had with him. Listening to him comment about everything, I thought he must have earned that golden tongue over the years. I bet Aunt Faye is still laughing or rolling her eyes. Take your pick. I'm sure he built that repertoire of quick one-liners while working at Jim Jamerson's crew for about 30 years, for over 30 years. Sitting behind that bulldozer that he famously mastered while earning the nickname Doc. It was the precision of his hands behind that dozer that got him there, a skilled surgeon at work. Dad told me a story of when he was a child about Uncle Aubrey, how Uncle Aubrey would come home to Mommy Evie's. He would come home in the hours of darkness from out of state. Even now the smell of his Old Spice inspires the nostalgia of his company. Of course, my dear aunties and Dad would take advantage of his exhaustion. They snag his chewing gum that he left on the fireplace in good trust while he was passed out. It wasn't just chewing gum they took advantage of. Sunday mornings, Mama Evie gave carte blanche to Aunt Wanda and Carolyn, Aunt Becky, and my dad to use whatever means necessary to awaken Sprig from his hard-earned slumber. You see, he had been out all night, partaking of the spirits, and the preacher would be joining them for dinner. So, of course, once successful in awakening Sprig, and I do believe you guys used hoses, what was it, broomsticks or something? Awakening Sprig. You had to plan for an escape and speed, and had the speed to accommodate. God forbid you stumble, he'd catch you by the hair. For those who remember, Sprig loved racing. It wasn't superficial either, and TV wasn't enough. He had to hear the roar of the engines, inhale the fumes, and feel the stand shake from the speed. On the weekends, you could find him down at the dirt track. I'm certain he's still watching that dirt track from a much better seat now. More so, we all remember how he loved to cut a rug. Underneath that austere construction worker, he added an obscure charm. I bet Aunt Faye put some miles in those dancing shoes trying to keep up. What a wonderful life they had, 20 years of humor and dancing. I'm sure there were rough times in the middle I would have never noticed. It seemed to have been washed away by their love for each other and the humor therein. But dirt tracks, doziers, and dancing isn't all that he loved. He loved Faye. She was his best friend, confidant, and wife of 20 years. The years they spent together reminds me of the dependency we all have for love. It contributed to the distinct memory I had of Uncle Aubrey after Aunt Faye had passed. Dad, Jason, and I were doing some home repairs down at the old place in Eastman. Uncle Aubrey was in the bathroom moaning and summoning Faye. He'd be bellowing, "Faye!" No one answered. He continued to do so for what seemed like an eternity. I remember asking Dad, "Why is he calling for her?" And Dad leaned over and told me in a quiet voice, "Son, your Uncle Aubrey loved her to death. You see, the cancer had gotten her and seemed to have gotten Sprig too. I know they're together now. I bet they're step dancing to the sound of harps." Even so, I miss Graham. I can never say how grateful I am to have lived with her and known her. She took Jackie, Jason, and Rachel and I in without hesitation. I heard some of us might have gotten Aunt Becky's room. She taught the work ethic, forthrightness, mental fortitude, frugality, order, and willful sharing of a generation long since past. Mom, Dad, and Graham made for a home that survived the test of time. She loved us and gave freely, despite our ignorance and adolescence. Graham could leave an impression, and she left one on me, usually with a belt. She was tough and witty as they come. Don't expect a hug from her as much as the truth. A truth I needed. A truth which is in demand today. She wasn't the grandma that told you what you wanted to hear to make you feel warm. She made me figure out what kind of man I was going to be. A man of virtue, not an immoral one. I carried that virtue challenge with me to the military and can still hear her tell me, "Lying is always wrong." In this post-truth era, a generation which seems to have abandoned genuineness, her voice is much needed. That wasn't where my preparation for the military stopped. It was where it started. Graham was organized. She'd say everything has its place. And she knew if anything had moved in the house. So if we wanted to get back at one of our siblings, we tricked them into moving something. For example, we asked Jason to remove a pesky asparagus from the yard that we didn't want to eat. Needless to say, it earned the sentence of corporal punishment, which I think was 7 lashes from the fly swatter. It was worth having the family dinner minus a few stalks on the plate. Thanks, Jason. It wasn't just organization. Graham loved working in the yard. She'd spend the whole afternoon manicuring our little Garden of Eden on the lake. It had every color on God's earth in the spring. She would labor like a soldier digging in for battle in the heat of Florida sun. We know we were out there with her. We were out there the whole time. Our favorite is when Aunt Wanda, Aunt Carol, and Aunt Becky would visit, especially Aunt Becky and Aunt Wanda, because 2 weeks out we'd begin to prepare for their arrival. Us grandkids would disappear into the flower beds in the garden. I think we pulled every cat's claw, uprooted every weed, and disentangled every cluster of Spanish moss in the entire county of Putnam. Her attention to detail extended beyond yard work. Our nosy neighbors, the Hendersons, decided our yard was more interesting than their life, or than life. They went from bird watching with binoculars to paying attention to Graham's yard. Insofar as they spied, Graham made her protest visible. She took a pair of binoculars, hung them from the garage, and what we call in the military a show of force to intimidate the enemy. Designed it. She also made sure to alter the lunar cycle in her descent, exposing a full moon out of season. Her taunting reminded me of Elijah's mocking of the Baal worshippers' bizarre actions. I know many of us here have spent time with her. I can remember her solace as she petted her collies whilst reading a John Grisham novel. I can still see those reading glasses hanging on the tip of her nose as she peers at me, ready to give me some words of wisdom. It'd be winter and I'd be walking out the door by the fireplace and my jacket would be unzipped. She'd say, "Zip up your jacket, Mr. Nakul." Nakul has it because I'm Nate and I'm also cool, so I earned the name Nakul from her. So, my sister Jackie couldn't be here. She sent me a story that she thought best captured their relationship. Jackie was getting ready for prom, and Graham, exercising her frugality, had traveled the breadth of the Central Florida to find Jackie a prom dress. Jackie wasn't looking for anything fancy or expensive, thus the quest took Graham and Jackie to every yard sale and flea market. Jackie said there was no dress to her liking. In fact, there was no dress from the 20th century. After much grief, as Graham so famously used, she took Jackie to Ocala to buy her a $200 dress. I don't know about you, but I'm a little jealous of Jackie. I never got a $200 dress. But that's the way Graham was. She'd be hard on the front end and soft on the other. I suppose she gets up every morning and loads up a chariot full of coworkers for a carpool to work with those 35 years she spent at Southern Bell. I'm certain she's working in the communications department in heaven, probably graphing our prayers. And after work, she's tending to the Garden of Eden with her garden gloves and her scratcher, sitting over there on the table, planting some azaleas. She's in a new Salvation Army now, probably driving across the entirety of heaven to save 5 cents with a handful of coupons. Finally, I'm proud to have known and love Linda Martin as my Graham. She was a wonderfully made woman and tough. I've served with the women in special operations from all over the world and women in the CIA. She's the toughest woman I know. No Great Depression, no broken hip, no dementia, no divorce, no hurricane, no war, no distance, no memory, no injustice would go without a fight for my Graham. She's loved and always will be. As the Apostle John said, "Truly I say to you, he who hears my word and believes in him who sent me has eternal life. He is not condemned. He has passed from death to life. And truly, truly I say to you, the hour is coming, and now is, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live." Let us have a moment of silence in respect for Linda Martin and Uncle Aubrey. Well, I know there's more than just me speaking here. I know there's a lot of memories with Graham and Uncle Aubrey. I know Mom has a few words that she wanted to come up and speak, but if you feel free to step up and share a memory of Graham and Uncle Aubrey, maybe one that we love to re-experience, relive, or haven't heard before. But Mom, if you wanted to come up and...
I believe the first time I met Miss Linda, she came to California to stop and check out who her son was marrying. She told a story about farting in a jar of cold cream.
Oh no.
She was trying to make me comfortable because I was terribly shy. I never had a better friend than Miss Linda. She taught me a lot about caring about people and my surroundings. She made friends with strangers easily, doing simple things like taking fresh picked cucumbers to the man who stopped working on his heavy machinery in the cemetery. He was refreshed by the cukes and the conversation. One of Miss Linda's short prayers was, "God bless the poor, the sick, and the needy." She took that to heart and truly tried to bless others. Those of us who truly knew Miss Linda knew she had a fiery side. She was a person who could say she was sorry when it fit. She was an important part of my family. When my son Jason was born, we were living in Miss Linda's house in Florida. She held him and said, "You ain't never leaving." She loved my children that much. One phrase she liked to say was, "Things have a way of working out." She took me to Chauncey Baptist Church, where she said Uncle Charlie used to preach. I'm still a member there. It was a privilege taking care of Miss Linda in her last years. I was glad I could be there for her. Being a citizen of heaven, keeping the faith in the blood sacrifice, heaven will be a great family reunion. Definitely looking forward to seeing Miss Linda again.
Anybody else like to say anything?
I better tell you my side of the story before we leave here. I'm just wondering if we know the same lady here. As most of y'all know, Linda was my neighbor, or later in years. But anyway, she told me about the binoculars. But she told me some wild stories.
I think I hung them up there for her.
That you see there, you're just as guilty as she. But anyway, we had a very, very close relationship. She never was ugly to me. She never said anything out of the way. She would come to the house sometimes, she'd say, "Geez, Kay," I can hear her now. She'd sit in that rocker and she would rock for dear life. "I just got to vent." I said, "Okay, we're gonna vent." Well, we'd been about 50 minutes. She'd say, "I'm through. Now what we gonna talk about?" So we just had, we did the cemetery work together, but now y'all, you talking about somebody that can't keep a flower alive? I can't keep a hen bitty. Y'all old people know what hen and bitties are. It's a flower you're supposed to break the leaf off and put in the dirt and it grows. You can give me one and it's dead in 2 weeks. And she would laugh because she can make everything grow. It just made me so happy. She tried that once or twice but found out I couldn't keep her flowers alive.